They lit up our television screens with innocent smiles and boundless energy. These were the kids who made us laugh during Saturday morning cartoons, who taught us about friendship on after-school specials, and who seemed to have the world at their fingertips. But behind those bright lights and studio magic lay a darker truth that would destroy most of their lives. Tonight, we're telling the heartbreaking stories of 10 beloved child stars from the 1980s who lost everything. Some fell victim to addiction, others were exploited by the very people who were supposed to protect them, and a few simply couldn't handle the pressure of growing up in the public eye. Here's what'll shock you most. Number 3 on our list was making more money at age 12 than most adults make in a lifetime, but by 25, they were living in their car. And wait until you hear about number 2. Their own parents stole every penny they earned and then disappeared, leaving them with nothing but trauma and debt. So settle in, maybe grab some tissues, because we're about to take an emotional journey through the real cost of childhood fame. And if you grew up watching any of these kids on your television screen, hit that subscribe button. Their stories deserve to be remembered. Number 10. Leif Garrett from Teen Idol fame. Leif Garrett wasn't just a child star, he was a teen idol phenomenon. His blonde hair, perfect smile, and pop music career made him one of the biggest stars of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Girls screamed his name at concerts. His face was on bedroom walls across America. But the pressure to maintain his image and the grueling schedule took a toll on someone who was still essentially a child. By his early 20s, Leif was struggling with drug addiction that had started during his best years. As his addiction worsened, his career collapsed. Recording contracts were canceled, concert tours were called off, and his management team eventually abandoned him. In 1979, Leif was involved in a car accident that left his friend paralyzed, marking a turning point in his public image. Leif has spent the decades since struggling with addiction, recovery, relapse, and multiple arrests. He's been in and out of rehabilitation centers and has lost most of his possessions to his drug use. Today, Leif is still fighting his demons, serving as a reminder of how quickly teenage stardom can turn into adult tragedy. Number 9. Danny Bonaduce from the Partridge Family. Danny Partridge was the wisecracking redhead who provided comic relief on the Partridge Family. Danny Bonaduce's natural timing and rebellious energy made him a fan favorite, and his catchphrases became part of 1970s pop culture. But Danny's real life was far more complicated than his television persona. Even during the Partridge Family years, he was dealing with an abusive home life and the pressure of being the primary breadwinner for his family while still a child. When the show ended in 1974, Danny faced the challenge that destroyed so many of his peers, transitioning from child star to adult performer. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Danny's life became a public spectacle of arrests, addiction, and personal chaos. The money Danny had earned during the Partridge Family years was long gone, spent on drugs and legal fees. He found himself homeless at various points, sleeping in his car or crashing with friends. But Danny's story includes moments of hope. He's been open about his struggles and has used his experience to help others. He's found work as a radio host and has worked to break the cycle of dysfunction that marked his own childhood. Number 8. Kristy McNichol from Family. Kristy McNichol won 2 Emmy Awards before she was even 18 years old. As Buddy Lawrence on the groundbreaking drama Family, her natural acting ability made her one of the most respected young actors in Hollywood during the late 70s and early 80s. When Family ended in 1980, Kristy seemed positioned for major movie stardom. Studios were lining up to offer her leading roles, and critics were predicting a long, successful career. But behind the success, Kristy was struggling with mental health issues that the pressures of fame only made worse. In 1992, at the height of her career, she made a shocking announcement. She was retiring from acting completely. She was only 30 years old. The truth was that Kristy was suffering from bipolar disorder, and the stress of maintaining her career had become unbearable. She'd lost most of her savings to medical bills and periods when she couldn't work. Today, Kristy lives quietly, focusing on her mental health and avoiding the spotlight completely. Her story is a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a star can do is walk away. Number 7. Dana Plato from Diff'rent Strokes. Dana Plato seemed to have the perfect life as Kimberly Drummond on Diff'rent Strokes. The show ran from 1978 to 1986, making Dana a household name during her teenage years. But when Diff'rent Strokes ended, Dana discovered that her perfect television life had hidden a devastating reality. She was pregnant at 18 and was written out of the show. Without steady income, she found herself struggling financially in ways she'd never imagined. Desperate for money, Dana posed for adult magazines and took roles in low-budget films that damaged her reputation. By the 1990s, she was battling drug addiction and had been arrested multiple times, including for armed robbery. Tragically, Dana's story doesn't have a happy ending. In 1999, she died of a drug overdose at the age of 34. Her death was ruled a suicide, the final chapter in a life that had promised so much but delivered mostly pain. Dana's story remains one of the most heartbreaking examples of how quickly a child star's life can spiral out of control. Number 6. Todd Bridges from Diff'rent Strokes. Willis Jackson was the responsible older brother on Diff'rent Strokes. Todd Bridges brought maturity and street smarts to the show, but his real life was anything but stable. When Diff'rent Strokes ended, Todd struggled to find adult roles and turned to drugs as a way to cope. What started as occasional use quickly became a serious crack cocaine addiction that consumed his life. The lowest point came in 1989 when Todd was charged with attempted murder in a drug-related shooting. Although he was eventually acquitted, the trial seemed to mark the end of any hope for career rehabilitation. But Todd's story is one of the few with a genuinely happy ending. He got sober in the 1990s and has remained clean ever since. Today he works as an actor, author, and motivational speaker. He's married with children and has built a stable life far from the chaos of his addiction years. Todd's recovery proves that it's possible to overcome even the darkest periods and build something meaningful from the wreckage. Number 5. Corey Haim from teen movie fame. Corey Haim was the baby-faced heartthrob who defined 80s teen movies. Films like The Lost Boys and License to Drive made him one of the most recognizable young actors in Hollywood. But behind Corey's charm was a young man struggling with addiction and alleged abuse he'd suffered on movie sets. As the 1990s arrived, he found himself typecast and struggling to find roles that matched his earlier success. Corey's financial situation became desperate as his career declined. The money from his peak years was gone, spent on drugs and poor decisions. He was forced to take increasingly smaller roles in low-budget films just to survive. The most heartbreaking aspect was his relationship with his mother, who had managed his career. He often spoke publicly about feeling exploited by the very people who should have protected him. When Corey died in 2010 at the age of 38, his death was ruled an accidental overdose. His passing marked the end of a life that had been derailed by the very industry that had made him famous. Coming up, the most shocking story of all, the child star whose own parents disappeared with all their money. Number 4. Leif Garrett from Teen Idol fame. Leif Garrett wasn't just a child star, he was a teen idol phenomenon. His blonde hair, perfect smile, and pop music career made him one of the biggest stars of the late 1970s and early 1980s. But the pressure to maintain his image and the grueling schedule took a toll. By his early 20s, Leif was struggling with drug addiction. As his addiction worsened, his career collapsed. Recording contracts were canceled and his management team abandoned him. In 1979, Leif was involved in a car accident that left his friend paralyzed. The incident, which happened while he was under the influence, marked a turning point in his public image. Leif has spent the decades since struggling with addiction, recovery, relapse, and multiple arrests. He's been in and out of rehabilitation centers and has lost most of his possessions to his drug use. Today, Leif is still fighting his demons. His story serves as a reminder of how quickly teenage stardom can turn into adult tragedy. Number 3. Gary Coleman from Diff'rent Strokes. Arnold Jackson's "What You Talkin' 'Bout, Willis" became one of television's most famous catchphrases, and Gary Coleman became one of the most recognizable faces in America. During Diff'rent Strokes' run, Gary was one of the highest-paid child actors in television history, earning millions of dollars. But here's the devastating truth. By the time Gary became an adult, almost all of that money was gone. Gary's parents and various financial advisors had systematically stolen or mismanaged his earnings. When he turned 18, instead of inheriting a fortune, Gary discovered he was essentially broke and owed money to the IRS. The betrayal by the people who were supposed to protect him left Gary bitter and distrustful. Gary's later years were marked by financial struggles and legal troubles. He worked as a security guard and took any acting job he could find, but he never escaped the shadow of Arnold Jackson. When Gary died in 2010 at the age of 42, he left behind a legacy that was both beloved and tragic. His story became a symbol of how the entertainment industry can fail to protect its youngest performers. Number 2. Jackie Earle Haley from the Bad News Bears. Jackie Earle Haley was the scrappy underdog in the Bad News Bears. His portrayal of Kelly Leak made him one of the most memorable child actors of the 1970s. But Jackie's story includes one of the most shocking betrayals in child star history. His parents, who had managed his career and finances throughout his childhood, systematically stole every penny he'd earned and then disappeared from his life entirely. When Jackie turned 18, he discovered that the accounts that should have contained hundreds of thousands of dollars were completely empty. His parents had spent or hidden all of his earnings, leaving him with nothing. With no money and no family support, Jackie found himself working construction and driving delivery trucks just to survive. For years, he struggled in obscurity, trying to rebuild his acting career from scratch. But Jackie's story has an inspiring ending. In 2006, he was cast in Little Children, earning an Academy Award nomination. Today, he has built a successful second career as a character actor. Jackie's story proves that talent and determination can overcome even the worst betrayals. Number 1. Anissa Jones from Family Affair. Anissa Jones was America's little sweetheart. As Buffy Davis on Family Affair, she was the adorable 6-year-old with pigtails who captured hearts from 1966 to 1971. But when Family Affair ended, 13-year-old Anissa struggled to figure out her identity beyond the Buffy character. She had no normal childhood experiences, no friends outside the industry, and no sense of who she was when she wasn't performing. Anissa's parents had divorced during her Family Affair years, and the custody battle had been brutal. The stress, combined with career pressure, left Anissa emotionally damaged and rebellious. As a teenager, Anissa began experimenting with drugs and alcohol. By 18, she had access to her trust fund and spent it on drugs and a lifestyle that was spiraling out of control. On August 28, 1976, just one day after her 18th birthday, Anissa died of a drug overdose at a friend's house. The little girl who had brought joy to millions had died alone, far from the lights and cameras that had defined her short life. Anissa's death shocked the entertainment industry and forced a conversation about protecting child actors. Her story became a cautionary tale about preserving childhood innocence, even in the spotlight. These 8 stories aren't just about fame and fortune lost. They're about children who were robbed of their childhoods, exploited by adults who should have protected them, and thrust into a world they weren't equipped to handle. What strikes me most is how similar these stories are. Almost everyone faced the same challenges: financial exploitation, lack of normal social development, addiction as a coping mechanism, and the impossible pressure of maintaining a public image while trying to figure out their own identity. But there's also hope in some of these stories. Todd Bridges and Jackie Earle Haley found ways to rebuild their lives and create meaning from their experiences. They proved that survival is possible, even after the darkest chapters. Their stories also led to important changes in how child actors are protected today. Laws requiring education, limiting working hours, and protecting earnings in trust funds came about largely because of these tragedies. These kids gave us joy during our own childhoods. They made us laugh, taught us lessons, and became part of our family television experiences. They deserve to be remembered not just for their tragic endings, but for the happiness they brought to millions. Which of these stories affected you most? Did you have a favorite child star from the 80s who you wondered about over the years? Share your memories in the comments below. If this journey touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe. Remember that behind every child star was a real kid with real dreams and a real need for protection. Thanks for joining us, and remember to cherish the innocence of childhood, whether it's on screen or in real life.